Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I am your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is a frequent flyer on the show, one of my favorite guests, Lila Bennett, the Director of Community Relations at Northeast Kingdom Human Services. Welcome to the show, Lila.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
It's always great to have you on. You're a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
Especially, mental health. It's not. Some people wouldn't think it's an exciting topic, or they might even think it's a tough topic. But you make this tough topic and a bit easier to understand.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I think we're at an exciting time to be looking at mental health and what that means, and how do we support people, and how do we talk about it more easily.
Right. And I think I've told you before, I think you've played a key role at the agency in helping bring this message forward. And I think between what you've done and what other groups have done, it's actually not a taboo topic anymore.
Right. I think that's what we're working so hard on, is to break the stigma and sort of allow people to understand that everybody has mental health struggles or mental, we all go through times in life that might be harder than other times in our lives, and that doesn't make us weak. It doesn't make us less human. It doesn't make us, somehow have something we should be ashamed about. It's just kind of reality.
Right. So since you've arrived on the scene, there's been a lot more. You've had different events at the agency, and I'm not saying you're the only one, but
no.
you are the voice of the agency when it comes to community outreach, and you have some more events coming up.
Yes, we do, and I do want to sort of touch on that the whole point of Northeast Kingdom Human Services is that it is a team. Right. That it's not just one person, and that it doesn't take just one person to get help. Like you need support network, and everyone at NKHS does work together to kind of to put forward the services and support our community. The events that we have coming up that are most exciting, the first one is on February 26th, is at the Moose Lodge in St. Johnsbury, and we're doing a family fun day, and it's all just for the public. We're having a spaghetti dinner. We're doing activities all day long, and this is just to welcome the community to come meet some of the staff that we have in our children's department. It's focused around families and children, so that people can understand what we do to support families.
So you don't have to be a client or a family?
No, it is open to the public, and it's free, and it's just to have people come, do some activities. February is tough in the Northeast Kingdom sometimes. It's hard to find things to do with your kids. You don't want to be just cooped up all day, and sometimes it's really cold and snowy. Not everybody can ski, and so it's just a nice, fun way to go spend the day.
Right. And the Moose Lodge is located, is that Portland Street?
Yes, it is.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so when is this again?
February 26th.
And what time?
It's all day long, 9 to 7.
So there's really no beginning, or there's a beginning and mm-hmm. end, but you can just drop in.
You can drop in and you can check it out.
So what will be going on at it?
The point of doing a family fun day is to try to reach out to the community more and highlight our services. This is something that we haven't really been doing. We've just been kind of flying under the radar providing services. Yep. But it turns out we're seeing almost 300 kids a month through NKHS. So we do significant care and work with our communities, and people don't always know that. And so this is a way for us to say, hey, we're here. Right. Come see what we can do to help you if you need some help.
And this also probably helps destigmatize the agency for the kids, as in it'll give the kids a connection just in case somewhere on that they need help.
Right, because we do a lot of school-based services also. So, you know, if there's a Northeast Kingdom Human Services worker in the school, maybe this is a way for the kids to be a little more familiar, and then later on get to know someone who may be in the school with them. Yes.
So what else is coming up?
Then the next event, which is very exciting, is we have been working for really a year with Linda Cottrell, and she is an artist who created a phenomenal exhibit called the 99 Faces Project. You can check it out. You can get information about the project online at 99facesproject.com. But Linda had a family member that received a diagnosis of schizophrenia, and it was traumatic for her to learn that this person very close to her was having a lifelong mental illness that was going to need constant daily treatment. And her way of coping was to process through learning about it and reaching out to doctors, to other people who were suffering with mental illness and who were coping and living happy lives after diagnosis. Right. And so she did a bunch of research and ended up taking 99 photographs that are beautiful. They are, you know, large and very striking. And there's 33 of people with schizophrenia, 33 of people with bipolar, and 33 of people who love them. And they're all mixed together, and you can't tell who is who. And the point of that is to show that you can't really judge a person by what they look like. Like, you don't know what's going on inside of a person. So she made this amazing art exhibit, and it's only been displayed in places like Dartmouth and Tufts. And we got it up here, and it's hanging right now at NVRH, Northeastern Vermont Regional Hospital.
Now, where are they hung?
They're in the gallery. So when you walk in the front door and you turn to the left, you'll see all of the portraits on the walls. And they've been there since November. And we are having an event on March 6th. It's kind of like the closing event. We'll be taking the exhibit down on March 6th after the event. And we're having a panel of emergency workers, doctors, and clinicians to talk about how places like Northeast Kingdom Human Services and hospitals and police and community partners in general can work together to respond to people in crisis, and how the more we work together, the more we can alleviate crisis. Right. You know, lots of times when people have no hope, they go to the ER, and they get sort of maybe minimal help if there's not a clinician there, and then they go home, and then they find themselves in the same position, and then they're back in the ER. And ER visits are really expensive. And so we're looking at putting therapists embedded in our emergency departments. So NKHS and the hospitals are collaborating efforts, and we're getting funding from One Care Vermont to embed workers in these hospitals to hopefully alleviate repeated emergency room visits.
Right. And the thing is, if somebody's is in serious crisis, some of them are being housed in ERs now, which is not, it might be better than them going out and possibly hurting themselves, but because of the lack of beds in the state, they're having to live in ERs, and the problem with that is, well, it's not the perfect place for them. But on the other hand, it's also not the perfect situation for the hospital either. So I think that's being worked on, trying to resolve. But.
We are. I think there's a lot of discussion around this, and one step to that is, you know, if we have embedded workers in the ERs, we can work with them to get them to the proper resource where they need to go. What do they need for help? What is the support? Because an emergency room visit is expensive. It's like on average like over $2,000. So when you think of someone being stuck in an emergency room for 10 days, that's a lot of money. That's all taxpayer money. So what's a more responsible way of using money to support people in crisis?
And you know, in all fairness to the medical staff, they are not, you know, they have limited education in mental health. So I'm sure they are welcoming, those plans.
Absolutely, because they're overloaded too with the other visitors to the ER, and I think that's one thing that's pretty exciting about the future of healthcare in general is that it's integrated healthcare. It's not mental health and physical health. It's healthcare. It's your whole body, and how can we work together as organizations to provide health?
Right. It sounds like things are moving in the right direction because, throughout the years I've often thought, and, from an outsider looking in, there's all these agencies, and, there's Area Agency on Aging. Is that still?
The Vermont Council on Aging?
Yeah, Vermont
Yes.
Council. It used to be that. I just forgot. Then you have NEK, and from an outsider looking in, it didn't look like they necessarily worked like together in collaboration.
But
it looks like they're really doing.
We are working. We are creating consortiums and continuums of care where there's a seat at the table for everybody in an organization. And so, like in the Northeast Kingdom right now, which is really exciting, is we have a consortium of care that's just focusing on housing. So we have the executive director from Rural Edge, and we have NEK, and we have NKHS, we have the Center for Restorative Justice, and more. And everyone is looking at what is the actual need, and what are the opportunities to be able to provide support for those needs.
The one area I think I see some very positive things happening, and unfortunately sometimes it rises out of tragedy, is law enforcement. Now, with no disrespect to them, because they too are not mental health workers, but over the years I've watched how things have, because I used to be, years ago, for several years I was a reporter for the Chronicle.
Okay.
And I got to watch how they used to handle mental health issues back then. And sometimes, I think even now we would look back and we'd be doing some serious eye rolls. But I've seen, as I said, I think some of it has arisen out of tragedy with how they seem to have, officers and law enforcement agencies seem to have teamed up with the different agencies to try to get help.
Yes.
Get help.
So just to bring it back to the symposium that's happening on March 6th.
Right.
At NVRH from 4 to 6 p.m. And it's going to be a conversation exactly about this, about the steps that all the different community partners are taking to work together to provide better care for people in crisis, like an emergency crisis. And then we'll be doing a tour of the exhibit with Linda. But yes, one other thing that Northeast Kingdom Human Services is doing, which is really exciting, is the trainings. We're offering trainings to community members about suicide prevention and awareness, and mental health first aid, and ways for law enforcement and other nurses, doctors to understand what is going on when someone is having a mental health crisis and what they can do if they don't have the support of a mental health worker there yet. And so some of it is training and education, and that's a lot of what NKHS is looking at too, is really promoting and working on offering these trainings so that we can all be more able to support people in the middle of a crisis.
Right. So, any other events? Because it sounds like you've had a string of events coming up.
Yes. We are constantly having events. So then the next big event, which is super exciting, is happening on May 7th. And this is the first ever in Vermont event of this type. It's called LeaderCast. And LeaderCast it's a nationwide conference where there's like the main conference that's happening, and then there's all these satellite sites around the country, and you can sign up to be a satellite site. And there's guest speakers who are all inspirational leaders who tell their story and what makes a good leader and kind of helps you become in charge of your own leadership skills.
Right.
And so leadership is happening on May 7th, and we are using the Church of God right next door from our Derby office on Crawford Road. It's from 9 to 5, and we have an event posted on our Facebook page, and we're selling tickets for that.
Right.
And Magic Johnson is the keynote speaker. So he won't be there. It's all
Right.
cast, so you see it on a screen, but it's still interactive and very cool.
You know, the interesting thing about leaders sometimes is some of the best leaders don't even call themselves leaders. They don't even see themselves as leaders.
Right.
Some of the people in my life who I consider strong leaders are people who, if you told them they were a leader, they'd say, "What do you mean?
Right.
I'm no leader."
And I think that that's a lot of what this conference does emulate and sort of try to educate people about, is that leadership isn't a thing. You don't just become a leader. You are a leader. It's who you are. It's how you live your life. It's how you communicate. It's how you delegate. It's everything about the way that you do your job and live your life. And so the reason that NKHS is so excited about taking on something like this is because, in a way, everyone who works at NKHS needs to be a leader. Like, it doesn't matter what job you have. You're working with people. You're helping them live a better, happier life, and a life that is defined by them. Like, what is happiness to them? And so you have to be able to be a respectful, supportive, communicative person to be able to help someone find their way.
Absolutely. So how does somebody sign up for this, or is it too early?
It is not too early. Registration is open. We are getting, people are buying tickets currently. You go to our Facebook page, and it's Northeast Kingdom Human Services on Facebook. There is an Eventbrite, and you can register right through there. Right. And there's only 100 tickets, so we are thinking that we're going to sell out very soon.
Right. Any more events that you have up your sleeve, or is that it right for now?
Well, we have some events in the works that are very exciting. So last year we did open houses at each of our locations, and we had carriage rides, and we had a magician who also is a client, and we'll be doing that again in June, at the end of June. And then after that, we are planning a fun music event at the Greensboro Highland Center for the Arts, and it's just in the planning stages right now, but put it in the back of your mind, because it's going to be a fundraiser for all the good work that we do.
As I said, I do realize that this is a team effort, but I'm going to tell you, there has been a real change in community awareness about Northeast Kingdom Human Services, and a lot of times it just happens to be you who, the voice and the voice. But I think there's a real change, and hopefully it continues in that direction.
I think so. I think that our teams, our leadership, our CEO, our chief of operations, like, everybody recognizes that one of the biggest barriers that we have is stigma. Right. And so I am supported in being able to talk about this. And that is really an important part of the job, is talking about the stigma and getting people comfortable. I think having our Facebook presence is actually pretty meaningful, providing just statistics and hope, and also trying to recruit people to come and work for us.
Yeah, I've noticed that you've been recruiting. Is that that's probably a difficult job right now, considering our economy, the employment picture. If you want a job, you can find one. So are you having a hard time filling vacancies?
We are. It's constant, and I mean, it's kind of twofold, because, as we talk about it, when we have a bigger presence in the community, and we are educating people that it's okay to call, suddenly people are calling. So then we need more therapists.
Right.
And so it's like this constant struggle and balance of what do we do? Do we keep talking about it, or do we work on recruitment? And how do we balance those things? And so it's a constant evolution and a constant conversation at the agency of, what do we need to focus on right now? And so currently we're really focusing on recruitment, because we are in this growth phase. We are sort of in this transition of talking about it and getting people to see that it's not weakness but strength when they make the call to come for help.
And when it comes to recruitment, especially your professionals, which a lot of times you are attracting from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They might be, when I say elsewhere, they might be people who grew up here and trying to woo them back home. But sometimes attracting people here, as with, I know for a fact with the hospital, they really struggle at getting professionals to settle here, because you have to really want to live in rural America.
You do. And I mean, the world is changing, though, and so there's so many benefits to living here. And so that's kind of what we try to say is like, hey, yes, there's challenges, but there's challenges everywhere.
Right.
And what we have to offer is meaningful work and an incredible community. And yeah, it snows,
Right.
and we have heating bills, but the flip side of that is the community and what an amazing place to live. And so can you live in an amazing place and do meaningful work? Yeah, you can, and that's here. And so that's what we try to say.
Yeah. And has it been working?
It has been working, yes. And we've actually recently hired some new directors who are from out of state to supervise our adult mental health and our substance use programs as they grow. But also, we have been just recruiting around, locally also. People who maybe didn't think that working at a human services agency was for them. But it's like anything, the more you talk about it, the more it plants the seed, and people say like, oh, well, maybe I could do that work. And we also provide some continuing education.
Right.
So you might not be qualified for just what you want to do, but you can get your foot in the door.
Right.
And if you're a dedicated person who is passionate, like, the agency wants those people. They're going to help.
And you have jobs that range from high school, you just need a high school degree,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to doctorates degrees.
Yes. Yes, you can start. One thing that's exciting is we've been talking to high schools, and we've been talking about working with people who maybe they're not ready to go to college. What is something they can do that's meaningful for a year? You could come and be a direct service provider. You can help someone actually live a better life and kind of take some time and find yourself.
And sometimes finding out what you don't want to do is as important as finding out what you do want to do, especially before you incur
Tons of debt.
debts.
Yes. And we are working with CCV. We have recovery navigator positions.
Right.
And so you could start with just a high school diploma and then say, I really want to work with people who are in substance use. And then we can chart that course for how to get you where you want to go. And so there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay, we only have about 5 more minutes
Wow,
left.
that went fast.
What more would you like to talk about, or how would you like to wrap up?
Let's see. I think the most important thing is to get people to come out on March 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. at NVRH to see the exhibit. The 99 Faces exhibit is so powerful, and it really does tell the story that you can't judge people.
Right.
You just don't know what anyone is going through. And there's people on the wall like Glenn Close and Kurt Vonnegut's son. These are people who were given a diagnosis, and they went on to do incredible things after. So you're not limited by a diagnosis. Like, mental health doesn't make you less than a person, less. And so we want people to come and see that, and we want people to come and hear about what we're doing in the community for crisis response.
You know, you're right, though, about you can't tell by a picture, and you can't even tell just because you might know the person has some serious mental health issues. That isn't only them. I know, without saying his name, I grew up knowing this guy, and he's still around, and he, to the outside world, he has an appearance of a person who has some serious mental health challenges. But I have got to know him in my history world is the guy is a genius. Because he's been on Main Street, spent a lot of time on Main Street throughout the last 40 or so years. And his mind, he remembers the smallest detail of every business that has been in every building. If I run into him, I might even ask him, "Hey, what was in that building?"
He would remember.
And he'll remember. And the uncanny thing is, he can often even tell you who the owners were. And if you really ask and you pick his brains, he could tell you a lot of the workers. And it's just who he is.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great parting thought, is like what is amazing about the conversation around mental health in general and intellectual and developmental disabilities is like, actually, every single person on this planet has a key to intelligence. Like, there is something. You can find it. And it's just a matter of being willing to see it and look. There's a guy, if anyone is interested, his name is Mark Utter, and he made a movie, and it's called I Am In Here. And he is nonverbal. He has to use assisted communication, and he is brilliant. And that's an example of someone who you might look at and say, that's just someone who doesn't have anything to offer, he can't talk, but he's fully capable. It's just he can't communicate.
I run into that a lot in my life, and that's how come I consider myself, in my writing, often the champion of the underdog, and sometimes the underdog are just they're average, everyday, ordinary people who've never been given a chance to have a voice.
Yes.
But other times it's people who, like this fella, I pick his brains and I value what he has to say.
I think that's the most important part of the conversation of mental health, is valuing people. Like, just because you might be struggling, it doesn't make you have less of a voice or allowed to have less of a voice.
Right. Or if you're not struggling, it doesn't necessarily make you better.
Exactly.
So.
Yes.
Okay, well, it was great having you on. As I said, you're one of my favorite guests.
I love coming.
And,
Thank you.
Okay.
I usually love having somebody with me, but today everybody was actually busy taking care of other people.
Okay. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.